Afternoon folks, this is Vinci Shooter here. Just thought I'd bring you another new purchase I made recently. As some of you may have seen, the other day I was out on the skeet range giving this thing a run through and testing it out. It's a very surprising little firearm. Okay, so what we have here for your viewing pleasure is an FQ Bobcat by Barthrantham Arms, I think it's called, from Turkey. Ported you into the UK by Practical Shooting Supplies. Supplied to me by my good buddy over at Masterclass Custom Guns, Andy Haynes. If you need to get in contact, any of the reliable stuff for practical shotgun or any kind of IPSC discipline, do check out Masterclass Custom Guns. Great supplier of goods. So what we have here is quite the anomaly. We have a lever action shotgun. This gun is cleared, by the way. There's no rounds in the breech, there's no rounds in the house, blah blah blah. All for your safety chiefs out there. This gun is empty. Obviously, I wouldn't do anything else with it. But as you can see, this is a lever action. Obviously, this is very similar to a pump action because obviously a manual operated firearm. But obviously what you have here in respect is obviously this lever arch mechanism in comparison to a pump action. I've always wanted another manual shotgun. It's just to obviously shoot for manual class, but as things were, I didn't really fancy another pump because they're pretty much of a muchness and there's too much going on. This was just intriguing because it is an illegal anomaly. This one actually has a 13.5-inch barrel, which makes it obviously an even more interesting firearm to own and shoot. Now, I've actually taken this out once, shot about 150 rounds through it, only bird shots. I've still got to put some slug through it and give it a try. But believe me, this thing is an amazing, good quality little gun, which is actually quite surprising for a Turkish-made shotgun. Obviously, having had the Typhoon F12, great little firearm, but it needed constant maintenance. This is of the same sort of area, I suppose. But anyway, so the main reason why I purchased one of these was to obviously have a go at manual class with the given advantage. Obviously I can have a sensible barrel length, but the idea of this is that it's something different, it's very unique, and it's something I can work on. Masterclass Custom Guns obviously will be doing some port work on it eventually, and we'll be able to obviously make this more of a competitive firearm. However, having been on the internet and having chatted with a few people, I've noticed that there's no actual instructions supplied for this firearm, and there's no way of anybody knowing how to strip it. So I took it upon myself the other evening whilst doing a few modifications, of which I haven't done anything major to it. All I've done is put a lighter spring in the safety because this was just, it was just horrendous. It still has a good bit of retention, but it quickly clicks. I've taken the trigger mech apart and put a lighter spring in there, and at the business end all I've done is I've pasted on a fibre optic just so I can work out where the hell I'm shooting, and at the same time put an aftermarket choke in. So this is just going to be a quick video to introduce you to the stripping and maintenance of this little tiny firearm. So first of all, again I repeat for the safety officers out there, this is absolutely unloaded. There's no ammunition on, around or near this firearm. The first thing you do is remove this nut. This nut itself is quite an interesting nut. Obviously you have all the teeth to obviously bind it down, but the magazine of the FQ is captured. So what we're going to eventually have to do is get a longer magazine tube or cut this off at the end of the threads and try and find it. Now from my experimenting and having a look, I think the thread on this is very similar to the Stoker M3000 magazine extensions. That seems to go on quite freely. Right, so remove that, and obviously you remove the handguard. Nice bit of wood, it's very well finished. I'm surprised at the actual quality of this, to be honest, but not being a great fan of wood, what I will be doing is putting some grip tape on this or something, because it's just a little bit too smooth for obviously trying to actuate the gun when it's fired. So safely put them to one side. Underneath obviously you have the barrel and the magazine tube. There's a secondary nut hidden behind the original nut that comes undone, and then obviously there's a smooth part on the magazine tube. Gently hit the second piece of thread because it can bind sometimes, and work that off, which then becomes free. Obviously keep this safely to one side because obviously this allows the the usage of longer barrels and for the release of any kind of mechanism. Keep this nut free and close by, because I think longer magazine tubes have this dual thread assembly on it as well. It also helps to keep the barrel tightly into the receiver, and I think they use this with the longer barrels themselves. So again, we'll just put this to one side. Okay, so what you then do, what I found, and again, this is not official instructions, I'm only literally going on my own experience. You put the gun to sort of almost half cock, for the want of better words, just as the bolt is coming towards the receiver, and that will free the barrel off. Just come straight out. So see, close the action, the barrel will come off. That releases your 13.5-inch barrel. This is just so beautiful. As you can see, I've already given this a clean and a grease up, so I'm literally just going to strip this down just for your entertainment. Okay, right, so what we have left is obviously the action bars, the killer of F12s, the bolt, and obviously the trigger mech itself. So what I've actually found on my own experience is to undo this front screw here. Now obviously be very careful undoing this. You don't want to be undoing it every single day. Something may go awry. So let's get that undone quick. Okay, so we are now going to undo this screw here. The screws can be quite tight. Just go at it. It will eventually come undone. The only thing you got to be careful is on the middle section of the trigger mechanism inside here, I think there's like some sort of roller type assembly that allowing the lever to also go forwards and backwards. So once that's done, this will come out. Just check it all the way through. What I do is I get a little just get a little punch, try and punch that through a bit. There we go, it's released. Bippity bappity boop. Now again, very important screw, so keep it safe to one side. One other modification I've just noticed, I did put some, half-heartedly put some paracord round and do it up nice and tight just before the curvature, because I know there's a safety feature here which obviously helps to lock the barrel up. You can't go further than that point that you see here, because that will stop it from coming up, and there is a safety spring detent here. So that needs to engage in there for everything to lock up tight for it to fire. Otherwise it will not go off. So if you go anywhere beyond that point there on the lever, you will not get any actuation out of it. I won't go bang. So what we do then is we can then pull that off. As you can see, there's the roller underneath, or some sort of assembly that helps it to turn, that does freely turn. That will not come out. Don't fanny around with that, it's just too much bother. So now we have a released action. What we do then is we get a little armourer's block. Okay, so now we have it underneath an armourer's block, which is allowing us to pop this pin out on the trigger mechanism. Now you don't want to go too mad on it, so just a little hammer would do the trick. It can be quite tight to start with. Just give that a gentle tap to start with. Reach for your longer punch. Boom, that's that, it's through. So your pin should freely come out. The one thing I've always been taught, this is your obviously extraction window. Pins go in that way and then they go back in that way, especially with Benelli's. So I'm following the same theory here, because the circlips that hold this in place, that engage here and here, have already got a way that they've been put in. So we'll put this safely to one side. So now in theory we have a released action. The trigger mechanism can be quite tight inside the assembly of this firearm. So what we do, just give it a gentle wiggle and that should come out. So what you need to do is bring the arm further up. This action needs to be up there for this to release out, because you literally need to push it forward just a tiny bit, because there is a tooth engagement here. As you can see here, this tooth here actually mates up to a female socket inside the actual receiver. Then you push forward and you'll find the bolt will go tight, because obviously the locking lug that goes up inside the barrel is now caught onto the top of the receiver. Push down gently, hear it click. Oh, I'm going to do this right-handed actually. Boom, comes forward. You see the whole assembly, the lever, the trigger and the bolt assembly comes off. Bit of backward, small amount of backward motion, and then pull it forward, and there is your bolt coming off. Cock the trigger down, and just by a few mil, this will come forward. And as you can see here, at the end of this castellation, the castellation as in the top of a castle, as the back of the castellation, there is a little pivot pin here. You pick it up, give it a little push, making sure it's square on the magazine tube, obviously. I don't want to make these jobs easy for you. There we go. Boom. Can you see that? Little pin coming out from the action bars and the trigger mech. So as you can see, the little pin came out. This now separates and comes forward, and there's your action bar, and then out comes your lever action. And that is the little pin that goes between this hole and this hole, which allows you then to take apart, clean and maintain your little FQ Bobcat. These are great little firearms. I have a future upgrade for this. I have a longer magazine extension coming. Now, the one thing I've noticed about this is that, all right, yes, it is not a pump action. Yes, it's a little bit. Yes, this is not a pump action, and yes, this is going to be a bit slower. But the release gates are still in there, shell release latches. But they've put too much metal in around here. They've started cutting it out to help you get a shell in, but the shell will actually sit that far out. So all you actually need to do, what we're going to do, is try and machine this down a bit more and just take these two shoulders out here, meaning you can actually get in a bit easier. Now, when I initially took this apart, what I was finding was that it was just very, very rough. Now, the reason why it was running a bit rough, this piece needs to be very well lubricated. Again, the trigger spring itself comes off. There is a very important piece of machinery here, which is this roller. And what I've done is I found a bit of steel tubing and actually improved this because it's got a lot less play in it. I was finding the action bars were binding up on the inside edge here of the trigger mechanism. So that needs to be well cleaned and well lubricated. Like I say, only two things I've done to the trigger mech is I released this pin here, this one here, that drives through, and I've just put a, I think it was, do you know, I can't remember what it was now. I just found it in my armourer's pot. I've got to keep all manner of springs and screws and all kinds, just keep them because you never know if you're ever going to need them. But I put that in, just makes it so much easier and more enjoyable. As for the trigger spring, you basically pop most of this assembly out like you would do. The other part, obviously, I did to this was I released all of this mechanism. It's like a Benelli. It's got the D clamp. It all comes off. There's a little spring, obviously, for your dog leg. But what I did with the dog leg is I polished that face up, polished this off, put I think it was a 4-pound spring in there. So now the trigger has a much crisper release. It's so much smoother. I didn't even have to polish this face up too much, just filed it a little. Just makes the break so much cleaner, and then the reset is so much shorter as well. I don't know why they didn't do that from the factory. Improve the roller, improve the safety, and improve the trigger pressure. As for this piece here, there's not really much you can do about that at the moment. I think, I was looking the other day, I think a Hatsan one might be possible, but I'm certainly going to eventually get Masterclass Custom Guns to weld them up, like he does with all your Benellis and everything. Anything you want, Benelli 1301, Masterclass will quite happily improve your action for you. He can put all the trigger springs in, he can put trigger reset, like an over travel spring in the trigger. It's amazing the stuff he can do. But I'm eventually going to square that off, because that again is like a Benelli. It's overdone. You don't need that. It just allows your thumb to get trapped behind it, and obviously if it was a semi-automatic firearm, that would bite behind you. So that's the only modifications I've done. I've literally polished everything up. I've put a trigger spring in, I've put a safety spring in, again slightly weaker, and just polished and cleaned things up. The other thing I've done is on the action bars here, is you can see, for example, you don't have to touch around here, you see all the rough machine marks. So what I've done is I have skimmed all that, so it's all nice and smooth, taken all the rough and bumps off, and sorted out these imperative bits here. These are the bits that obviously will eventually age over time. They get sharper because you can see the drag of where everything, obviously the action bar and everything travels over each other, and everything's mating in, because like I say, we're 170 odd rounds in. But I'll just polish these off at a more softer angle, just means they ride onto the shell release latches a lot easier. So to put it all back together again, it's a bit of a faff, but again, this is a really faffy gun, but once it's together it works very well. Okay, so once this is all back in, obviously you've cleaned everything, everything's greased up, ready to rock and roll. So what I'm using at the moment is some heavy gauge stuff. I'm putting some frog lube on. I don't know if I'm doing it right, really don't give a monkeys. All I do know is this is damn good stuff and it works really well. So I'm going to work some into the action, work some inside the receiver, until this is obviously really smoothed off. I'm going to stick with doing some heavy stuff. This will allow for obviously any transgressions I may or may not have with this action. So all I do, get that back in the receiver. Now this combines sometimes because obviously it's going past the actual 2 loading gates. You want to make sure you get it in just the right way. You get a feel for it and eventually boom, there you go, it just goes. So what we do is we slowly bring it back to about here, where you can see just the hold is just shy of this handguard receiver, I suppose. And obviously this is going to want to twist, because obviously I'm doing this sideways. You then make sure this is well oiled, well cleaned. Make sure there's loads of gunk on there so it moves freely. Oh, I did file this down a bit and smooth this out, because again, this was rough as arses. Place it up through the hole, make sure it contacts the roller, and then work the whole mechanism through the firearm. As you can see, there's the actual action bar coming up through the receiver window. So once you've got the action through, you can see the action bar is here, and obviously you've got your action bars themselves are your lever bar action bars. Keep your little pin handy to one side, and then this is where the magic happens. You then have to feed this through so that you can mate the lever bar with the action bar. You see I've mated them up here just shy of the receiver, so you're not scratching your receiver with the trigger mech. And then just simply pop it in. It slides straight in. And then bring the whole assembly back. It's like so. So the way I found the best place is where you'd have the bolt, have it to there. Just check it's all back. Then put it forward, allowing it all forward, making sure everything's cocked downwards. So this is all facing downwards. So once the little pin's back in, you want to put the bolt back on. You want to fold it in at this sort of an angle, put it on, and then push it forward. I found that's the best way. And then just keep a little tiny bit of pressure on there, keeping that forward, and eventually, boom, your bolt will then travel back inside the receiver. Once you've then done that, it allows you to place the trigger mech back up, like so. Now as you see, the bolt is only just coming back. There's about finger, probably 1/2 mil. So once the bolt is back inside the receiver, make sure it's about 1/2 inch between the bolt face and the receiver face here. And this allows you enough swinging room on the action bar to obviously put the trigger mech back in. So just cock it in like you would do any semi-auto one, and then push it up. Line it up, make sure all the holes are in, and you've got to push it back. There's a small amount of spring pressure there. I'm not quite sure what it is, but that will then hold. So once we've got that lined up, we then have this back in here, and we get our little armourer's hammer. Get it started, and then find a brass, get a nice decent brass punch. Some of these have seen better days, but I'm not marring up any finishing. It goes a bit tight. Now, I've also found with these, you actually have to feel for it to go click on the 2 pins. Earlier on when I showed you on the pin, there was 2 slots. that will then click. The mechanism, also you have to get a feel for it, and it'll just go click, and you can feel that it's in place. Once we've done that, we then have to, this is the bit that's really contentious. You actually have to, see, that will not actually line up, the hole will not line up, so you actually have to bring it back. Everything has to find its own place, but you can sometimes find, like now, your action won't come back because, again, the locking lug of this bolt is causing you problems. You need to pull it down as you pull it back, and then you have to wiggle it. Boom. Now it's all lined up. We send that back through, and then just start doing it up. Don't use a magnetic screwdriver. God, these things are a pain. Now, again, you don't want to slaughter the crap out of this. You just want to do it so it's nice and tight, so you can feel a little bit of tightness. Now, what I've decided is, in my little FQ Bobcat toolkit that I'm going to carry on the range, always make sure you've got a screwdriver. I don't know what size this is. It's a 4.5, so it might be worth carrying a 4.5 flathead screwdriver. So to get the barrel back in, you want to put the action, again, just about here. So you've got about an inch between the receiver and the receiver window. Retrieve your barrel. Your little tiny cool barrel. And this can be a bit of a pain because, again, you've got to do the timing here, allows obviously the receiver and the breech to re-engage. What we have here is the receiver window goes in. Was it all the way back? That's it, all the way back. Right, that's it. Okay, so what you have to do is you need to almost shut the action to allow the barrel back. This will start pushing the action back. You then push it forward. Like so. As you're pulling it back, the barrel will slide back into place. Now, I don't shut the action completely. I always leave a little gap here. This allows you then to make sure that the barrel and the receiver are actually mated up correctly, and then obviously allow you to put the nut on. So let me just go and retrieve the nut. So there's your nut. Make sure, again, you have a smooth face and an engagement face with teeth on it. You slide that onto the magazine, give it a damn good spin. One guy has actually contacted me and said he cross-threaded this part because he was going too quick. Make sure it comes off of there, and then just slowly get it to engage on the second thread. Boom, bites it down. Then take this lovely piece of balsa wood hardwood, slide it over, and again it should engage into what I've now coined the handguard receiver. Bop. Magazine tube on. And there we have it. We'll just get this into a more engagement place. One fully rebuilt FQ Bobcat. And I'm not even operating this with 3 fingers. I'm doing it open palm with 2 fingers at an awkward place with my shotgun stock in my chest. That's how buttery smooth I've got it to operate now. That is an FQ Bobcat. Amazing, amazing firearm that I'm hoping I should have a few giggles with. And that is until the next one. So hopefully at some point I should be getting a magazine fed shotgun by Hayes Custom Guns, which will be the VR80. So stay tuned, we've got more stuff to come. I will be out on Sunday shooting this for a laugh. I will not be using the 13.5-inch barrel. Actually, no, I may do, I don't know. See how the favour takes me in the morning. But yeah, this is a good alternative for a laugh and for manual action IPSC shooting. It's just a unique little firearm that offers a much better option for pump action. I'm bored with pump action. I wanted something a bit more of a challenge, and this certainly offers that. Anyway guys, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you don't, whatever. And if you do, subscribe. Just like and share it. Thanks very much guys. Take care of yourselves. Cheers now.